Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to the mid-year book freakout tag. I am filming this at the end of May, so I don't know if I'm doing it a little bit too early, but it's kind of mid-year, so I'm just going to count it. There are a bunch of questions. Most of them are about my favorite discoveries and stuff of the first half of the year, and then what I want to finish for the last half of the year. So let's jump into the questions now. The first question is the best book you've read so far in 2020, and I'm actually really struggling to think of them. I know in the past I've had a few really good 5-star reads, and it's been easier for me to pick out my favorites of 2019, for example, but when it comes to 2020, I'm actually really struggling to think of anything. The only one I can really think of, at least at the moment, is a book that I read for the Owls Readathon in April, and that is Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. This is a male-male love interest story in the form of a retelling of the musical Grease, and it was just a lot of cute and fluffy fun, so I didn't expect to love it as much as I did. It had a nice undertone of emotional impact, which involved a cancer subplot, and that really fleshed out the main character, Ollie. I don't think I would have had the same emotional response to it if it didn't have different facets of Ollie's life in here. You know, his friends, his family, his move to a new school, and his romantic interest in this new boy. So I think this did a really good job of traversing different parts of Ollie's life, and it had funny moments too. It had moments of solidarity, and it was just a beautiful story, to be honest. So yeah, this is one of my favorite reads of the year, at least so far, and it's a contemporary, which is very surprising for me. The second question is the best sequel you've read so far in 2020, and I actually think I finished the Spellslinger series this year, which seems like it was so far away. January feels like it was 20 years ago. But I finished Crownbreaker this year. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and this is the last book in a series, so I feel like I'm accomplished as well because I finished a series that I love this year, in addition to the fact that it's just a sequel in general. So Spellslinger, awesome. It's like an underdog main character set in a fantasy world where the magic system is really detailed and explained, but the main character can't seem to grasp the magic system. Despite understanding the intricacies of it, he just doesn't have the power, so he has to rely on sarcasm and bluffing to get through situations that are quite dire that he finds himself in, because the culture that he grew up in is quite toxic, and so he wants to get away from that and kind of break out of that. So the series follows Kellen, who grows significantly across the rest of the series. He has to unlearn the behaviors that were enforced on him as a kid, and he learns what true friendships are supposed to be like and true relationships are supposed to be like, rather than the manipulative transactional ones that he's grown up with his entire life. So it's just beautiful. I love his character growth, and I will read this series again eventually in the future, but at the moment I'm just really happy and proud that I read this as like the first or second book of the year and I finished a whole series. So nice, pat myself on the back. The third question is a new release that you haven't read yet but you really want to, and this is really easy for me. This is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, and she wrote the 5th season series, and it's a trilogy that's an apocalyptic fantasy series, and I fell in love with that in 2019, and I love her writing. It's very intricate and it's very deep character exploratory writing that is also quite diverse, and it's also very emotional and emotive, and it's very hard to follow as well. So if you read the first book in the 5th season trilogy and then you leave it for a while and you read the second book, it's going to be a struggle to follow, but I read them all back to back, so it was fine. So I'm anticipating that this is going to take a little bit more brain work than, you know, like an urban fantasy that I'd pick up just for funsies. So this is on my radar to read in June or July, but I don't know what my brain is going to be like then, considering it's a little bit all over the place with lockdown and COVID. So we'll see how we go with this. I'm planning on reading it very soon, but I don't know if that will actually happen. But I actually don't know what this even is about. It says in the back that it tells a revolutionary story of culture, magic, and myths in contemporary New York City. And N.K. Jemisin has a history of making the location and the place like a character. So she characterizes where the people are living, and that's what she very much did in the 5th season. So I'm anticipating that that might play a part in this book as well. And look, I'm sorry for being vague, but I can't really talk about the 5th season much more in that context without giving things away. So baseline is I'm looking forward to this. It's a new release. It came out in March and I haven't picked it up yet because I'm terrible. Question number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and that is super easy. If you've watched my channel, you know I love Brandon Sanderson, and Rhythm of War is coming out this year. That is the 4th book in his Stormlight Archive series, and generally his fans wait 2 to 3 years for each book in that series, so we've been waiting a little while, but it is always worthwhile. So I'm really anticipating that. It's a really hard series to describe because it's so detailed and intricate, and while there is a detailed plot going on, it relies a lot on characterization and world building. So if I go to explain it to you, you'll just be like, what? Because you won't understand like like the specifics of the world that I'm talking about, but we follow a couple of different characters. My favorites, at least in the first book, I'm not going to confirm what goes on with them later on, but as the first book stands, The Way of Kings, we follow Kaladin, who is a surgeon. He's the son of a doctor, but he gets absorbed into the ranks to become a soldier because he doesn't really have any choice. So it's got a really interesting dichotomy with the fact that his hands are usually used for healing, but he also uses them for murder. So he has a really hard time with that, and his character really struggles with depression and that kind of thing. He's a really interesting character to follow because he is linked somewhat to the magic system, and it's interesting to see him discover that. But we also follow Shallan, and she is a young girl who is from a fairly poor family, and she just wants to become a scholar, and she also wants to save her family from whatever they're going through. So she is potentially wanting to become a scholar, but she's also becoming a scholar and hoping to get the placement in that scholarship so that she can steal something from the person she's learning from. So the characters often have a few things going on at the same time. There are a few other characters. There is Adolin, and he is a prince in this world, and he has Shardblade and Shardplate, which are like the mythical weaponry in this world, and his race are at war with a race called the Parshendi. So like I said before, it's a very detailed series, but it's so worthwhile because when you get invested in it, you are absolutely 100% into the world, and it's so good. That is my long-winded answer for I'm super excited for The Rhythm of War, but that doesn't come out until like November, so I have a little bit to wait still. Question number 5 is my biggest disappointment so far this year. I'm thinking maybe All the Rage by Courtney Summers. I read this for my Owls readathon, and I did a vlog for it, so I have more thoughts. If you want a bit more specifics but without spoilers, I'll link that vlog. But this is a story about a girl who had a traumatic past and is now trying to recover. She lives in this small town, and it's kind of like a badly kept secret that she went through this stuff, and now she is on dire straits with the sheriff and the sheriff's son, and she gets bullied a lot at school, and then this girl goes missing and she feels like it's her fault. So that's kind of like the bare bones of what this story is about. And because I loved Sadie by Courtney Summers, it's a story about a similar premise actually. A girl is trying to track down her sister who has gone missing, and it has content that would be triggering if you're upset by sexual assault and violence. So be aware going into both of Courtney Summers' books that I've read at least so far. But I expected this to be like a 4 to 4.5 stars, maybe even a 5, because I really enjoyed Sadie, because it was told in a podcast perspective and then Sadie's perspective, and when I listened to the audiobook it was a really enriching experience because you got all the ambient sounds in the podcast and you got all the different voice actors and stuff, so it was a really good way to listen to it. I read this physically. I don't think it would have like a multiple voice actor cast because it was just one character narrating it the whole time, so I don't know. I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars, and I thought I would give it more. So it wasn't like it was a bad book and I'm like super disappointed in it, but it was a book that just kind of undercut my expectations. So that's why I'm choosing it for this question. I don't think I've had any 1 or 2 star reads this year, thankfully. So 3 stars is still a pretty damn good rating. So the fact that my disappointing read is only a 3 stars, I think that's pretty good. Question number 6 is biggest surprise this year. And I actually have a volume of manga over here, and that is Attack on Titan. And I wanted to see where I was going to stand with this series because this is volume 8. Manga is expensive, and I was like, will I like this after having a bit of a break from it? It's a dystopian series. All of humanity is now confined within a few rings of walls, and they are confined here because they're hiding from the Titans. And the Titans are these giant monstrous creatures, and their only goal seems to be to break in through the walls and eat all of the people. So there are these soldiers that live within these walls, and they are tasked to protect humanity and fight off the monsters. But you get a lot of gruesome deaths and a lot of blood and stuff in this book, and it turns out the Titans might not all be mindless, but you get more into that as you read through the volumes. And I wasn't sure, like I said, what I would think of this, so I picked this up for the Owls readathon again. I'll link the vlog if I remember, but I wasn't sure what I'd think, and I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. I was loving this, and the plot I thought was going to wrap up a specific element, but then it just expanded it in a different and new way that surprised me. So I was like, yes, I will continue this series. And I think there's more than 20 volumes, so I have a bit of a ride set in for me, but I'm looking forward to it. This series is dark, it's deep, it's disturbing as well, but it's a really interesting and intricate series, and it's one that I don't regret picking up, at least now that I've continued reading, because I had a few 3 and 4 star ratings and I really wanted some 5 star ratings to justify buying more volumes, and that's what this was, so I can continue the series. Question number 7 is favorite new author, and that can either be a debut author or just a new to me author in general. I don't know if I necessarily have a new favorite author, but I have discovered a series that I'm probably going to buy the rest of, and that is the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. This is an urban fantasy series. The main character I thought was a were-coyote, but she's actually just a shapeshifter. So she's a shapeshifter who shifts into a coyote. So like a skinwalker, I guess. It's different from like a werewolf, but there are werewolves in here. There are vampires in here. It's essentially a paranormal urban fantasy book, and it deals with all of these internal politics in the vampires, and it deals with murder, and it deals with politics within the wolf clans as well, because obviously there's a hierarchy of the alphas and stuff. And Mercy is our main character. She is a woman who is working as a mechanic, and she's just trying to run her mechanic store when one day this boy wanders in and she can smell his scent, and he is a lone werewolf. And if you're a lone werewolf and you wander into someone else's territory, it's very likely you'll be killed within a few days. So she kind of takes him under her wing, and she lives next door to an alpha werewolf, and she kind of involves him haphazardly as well. So it all eventually tumbles on from there. And I really like reading urban fantasy. It's just fun to see something in our world that has a magical and mysterious twist to it. So I've bought the second book in this series. They're just really fun to breeze through, and if I'm reading something that's really dense and really long, it's nice to actually just slot one of these books in between so that I can just have a break and give my brain a little bit of a breather and just enjoy something for funsies, rather than to kind of like self-analyze a book as I read it, or make myself pay attention to all the nuances of a book so that I pick up on all the world building. It's just a nice bit of a palate cleanser, really. So this is not like a new favorite author, it's just a new series that I'm really enjoying, because I don't think I actually have a new favorite author, at least not yet. Question number 9 is new favorite character, and again, I don't know if I really have one. I am reading the Diviners series by Libba Bray, and I actually really like Sam in that series. I really like a couple of characters in that series, but Sam would probably be the standout one. He's fairly sarcastic, which is like a gold star for me when it comes to characters that I love, but he also has moments of vulnerability and tenderness that he talks about and addresses with other characters, so he doesn't just keep that to himself, and I think that's really important for character growth, so I think that's why I like him as well, because he's honest. I guess Sam from the Diviners series, Sam Lloyd, he's good. I like him. Question number 10 is book that made you cry, and have I cried about a book this year? I don't think I've actually like full cried for a book this year, but I have had tears well in my eyes. So I don't know whether that counts. That happened with Crownbreaker, and I showed that before. And it also happened with Aurora Burning, which I'm reading at the moment. Can't obviously say why because it's a sequel. But I think that's the only two I can think of at the moment. Oh, and it happened for Before the Devil Breaks You by Libba Bray, which is the third book in her Diviners series. So yeah, 3 for 3. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy, and I would definitely say Only Mostly Devastated, but I don't know where I put it. Only Mostly Devastated. This is so fluffy and cute, and I loved it. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book that you bought this year that makes you happy, and I actually didn't buy this myself. I received it for my birthday, so eventually it will go into a book haul, but I haven't accumulated enough books to film one yet, but it will pop up when I actually film one, so let me just show it to you now. It is a fantasy book called The Vor, and you wouldn't expect it to be, you know, a beautiful cover or anything, but when you open it, look at how pretty that rainforest is. And then the last question is books that you need to read by the end of this year. One of mine is The Bloody Wheel of Time, because I've put this in a bunch of different videos and I still haven't started it yet, so bad on me. I want to read it. I'm just putting it off because it's intimidatingly long, and I'm not reading very much. I tend to read like a couple of pages over 2 weeks, and then I'll pick up a book and read 150 or 200 pages in a sitting. So my reading is kind of all over the place, but I'm hoping that once I start this and get a couple of pages in, that I will get hooked and then I won't be able to put it down. So that's the plan for this one. So Wheel of Time, Eye of the World, book 1. It's gonna happen. I also want to read the sequels to the Dresden Files. I'm listening to those on audiobook. So I think Full Moon is the second one, and then Grave Mercy is the third. So I have those. Want to read those, and I want to finish King of Crows by Libba Bray, because I've been dragging my feet on that audiobook. I don't know why. It's motivating myself to actually start listening to it. That is the problem. The book is fine. When I'm listening to the book, I can just like listen to ages and ages and ages of it at once, but it's actually motivating myself to just pick it up. That's the problem. So I'm very bad at that. I would like to reread some books before Rhythm of War comes out, but given that they're all very long, I don't know how I'm going to go. So I would like to read The Way of Kings, The Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer before November, but given that I've only got really June, July, and then August is The Newts, which is the follow-up to the Owls readathon, I guess I have October as well. There's also A Little Life, which is becoming like a joke at this point, because I always mention it when I have a book that I want to finish this year, and I just haven't started it yet. I also have my my priority books that I wanted to read this year, and I have not prioritized them, so my bad. But one of those is The Fireman by Joe Hill, and again, that's quite long, but I might read that in October, which is closer to Halloween, because I know he writes like paranormal horror, kind of like his father, Stephen King. So that's on the cards. Maybe Horns I will read by him as well, because I watched the movie for that and I really enjoyed it, and I think it's pretty similar to the book. And I also have a few series to finish, like I've got the Lifelike series to finish because the third book is coming out in June, and that's True Life. And then I've also got the last book in Amy Kaufman's series, which is Ice Wolves, Scorched Dragons, and then Storm something, I don't remember, but I'll put it on the screen. The last book in the trilogy is coming out in June, so I have a few things coming out and a few things that I own already that I want to read and reread and buy, so it's just going to be an overwhelming but fun time, I think. But there you go, that is the book tag. I have finished all the questions. If there's a book that you really want to read this year, please let me know down in the comments, because it'll probably be a book that I want to read at some point as well. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll chat to you in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.